The holographic display flickered with dying stars. Ambassador Telrin watched 3 solar systems blink out of existence within the same hour. Each vanishing light represented billions of lives consumed by the Drachnir swarm. The council chamber descended into chaos as representatives from 40 species shouted over each other, proposing evacuation plans and retreat strategies. The Velorum 3rd Battle Group is gone, High Commander Drax announced, his 4 arms trembling. 2,000 warships destroyed in 40 minutes. The swarm adapted to every weapon we deployed. Telrin's scales shifted to a pale blue, the color of deep concern among his people. He had seen the combat footage. The Drachnir bioships moved like schools of predatory fish, each vessel connected to a vast hive intelligence. They learned from every attack, evolved countermeasures in real time, and consumed everything organic in their path. Entire planets stripped down to barren rock. "We must abandon the outer rim," declared Ambassador Quinn, her crystalline form refracting the emergency lights. "Pull all civilian populations back to the core systems and establish a defensive perimeter." "That means sacrificing 40 billion souls in the Kesslin sector," Telrin objected. "We cannot simply abandon them." Drax slammed his primary fist on the table. "What choice do we have? The Avalon Collective sent everything we had. The Velorum Alliance deployed weapons that violate 3 interstellar treaties. Nothing stops them. The Drachnir don't negotiate, don't retreat, don't tire. They just consume." A junior officer rushed into the chamber, his breathing rapid. "Sirs, we have a new fleet signature entering the Warzone perimeter." "Who?" Drax demanded. "The Korthan Empire said they wouldn't commit forces." "It's the humans, sir." The room fell silent. Telrin felt something shift in his chest. He had worked with humans for 12 years, negotiating trade agreements and cultural exchanges. They were pleasant enough, enthusiastic about art and philosophy, skilled engineers and diplomats. But warriors. The galaxy knew little of human military capacity. "How many ships?" Drax asked. The officer checked his datapad. 1,500 vessels, sir." Quinn's form brightened with what might have been hope. 1,500. That's a significant fleet." "Let me see the vessel classifications," Drax ordered. The holographic display shifted, showing the human fleet composition. His face fell. Cargo haulers, survey ships, what looked like converted civilian transports. They sent merchants to fight a war. "Some of those signatures are unknown," the officer noted. "Our database doesn't recognize several ship classes." "Because they're improvised," Drax said dismissively. "Humans have been part of the galactic community for barely 2 centuries. They've never fought in a major conflict. They don't even have a proper military tradition like the Velorum clans or the Korthan warrior caste." Telrin studied the display more carefully. Something about the formation bothered him. The ships moved with precise coordination, maintaining perfect spacing and overlapping fields of fire. That wasn't merchant behavior. "What are they broadcasting?" The officer pulled up the communication logs. "A single message on all frequencies, sir. It says, 'Evacuation protocols suspended. Rules of engagement unrestricted.'" "What does that mean?" Quinn asked. Nobody answered. Telrin pulled up his personal files on human culture, searching for military references. What he found made his scales ripple with unease. Humans had unified their homeworld only 300 years ago, after what they called the Consolidation Wars. Before that, they had spent thousands of years in near-constant conflict. Tribe against tribe, nation against nation, ideology against ideology. He found references to something called the World Wars. Industrial-scale combat involving millions of soldiers, cities reduced to rubble, weapons that could level entire landscapes. Humans had developed atomic weapons before they achieved spaceflight. They had built machines specifically designed to kill other humans as efficiently as possible. Then they had stopped, unified, turned their attention to the stars. They had joined the galactic community with enthusiasm, sharing their art, their music, their literature. They seemed so eager to be peaceful, to trade rather than conquer, to talk rather than fight. But Telrin realized something troubling. Humans hadn't forgotten how to fight. They had chosen not to. There was a difference. "The Drachnir swarm is changing course," the officer reported. "They've detected the human fleet. They're moving to engage." Drax brought up the tactical display. The Drachnir bioships, tens of thousands of them, accelerated toward the human position. Their formations shifted into attack patterns that had overwhelmed every galactic fleet sent against them. "The humans are outnumbered 20-1, Quinn observed. "Should we send support?" "With what?" Drax replied bitterly. "We have nothing left to send. The humans are on their own." Telrin watched the two forces converge. The human fleet didn't scatter or retreat. Instead, they tightened their formation into a defensive sphere, every ship oriented outward. Weapons systems powered up, creating energy signatures that made the sensors flash warning colors. "Those power readings can't be correct," the officer said. "Some of those weapons are generating output levels equivalent to planetary defense platforms." "On ships that size," Drax leaned closer to the display, "that's impossible. The power requirements alone would." The human fleet opened fire. The sensor display went white with energy discharge. When it cleared, Telrin saw something that defied his understanding of modern warfare. The first wave of Drachnir bioships simply ceased to exist, not destroyed in the conventional sense, but erased, vaporized by weapons that turned matter into superheated plasma. "What are we seeing?" Quinn whispered. The officer's hands shook as he processed the data. Kinetic weapons at relativistic velocities, fusion warheads, directed energy beams, electromagnetic pulse weapons. They're using everything simultaneously. The Drachnir swarm tried to adapt, tightening their formations and enhancing their bioarmor. The humans switched tactics instantly. Missiles filled the space between the fleets, thousands of them, each one splitting into multiple warheads. Drax stared at the carnage. This isn't a battle, this is an extermination. Telrin understood now. Humans hadn't forgotten war, they had perfected it. Observer Nilrex materialized on the bridge of the human flagship Perseverance, his translation implant adjusting to the ambient noise. He had expected shouting, chaos, the kind of frantic energy that accompanied battle. Instead, he found quiet efficiency. Crew members spoke in measured tones, calling out coordinates and status updates with mechanical precision. Observer from the Kesslin Science Institute, a human female, approached him. She wore a dark blue uniform with 5 silver stars on the collar. "I'm Admiral Hayden. Welcome aboard." Nilrex struggled to process what his eyes were showing him. Through the massive viewscreen, the Drachnir swarm was being systematically dismantled. Human weapons created overlapping fields of destruction that nothing could survive. Yet Hayden's heart rate barely elevated above resting levels. "How are you doing this?" Nilrex asked. "The Drachnir defeated the Velorum Alliance. They adapted to every weapon system deployed against them." Hayden gestured to a tactical display. "They adapt to patterns. We don't use patterns. Every ship in this fleet operates independently while maintaining coordinated fire zones. The Drachnir intelligence tries to predict our next move, but there is no next move. There's only overwhelming firepower applied from multiple vectors." A young officer called out from the weapons station. "Admiral, the swarm is attempting to flank us through Sector 7. Lieutenant Brooks, deploy drone Screen Delta. Target their propulsion systems, then switch to thermal warheads." "Yes, ma'am." Nilrex watched as thousands of small craft erupted from the human carriers. They moved with insect-like coordination, swarming toward the Drachnir flanking force. Each drone carried enough explosive power to cripple a bioship. "You use artificial intelligence to control those?" Nilrex asked. "No," Hayden replied. Our pilots control them remotely. Humans adapt faster than any computer program. But the reaction time required. We train for it. Every pilot in that wing has spent 10,000 hours in combat simulation before they ever see real action. The drones engaged the Draknir flanking force. Nilrex expected fierce resistance, but the bioship seemed confused, unable to track so many small, fast-moving targets. The human weapons didn't just destroy, they created cascading failures. Engines exploded, sending shrapnel into neighboring vessels. Hull breaches vented atmosphere that froze into clouds of ice, blinding Draknir sensors. "You fight like you're trying to cause maximum chaos," Nilrex observed. "Exactly," Hayden confirmed. "Chaos is a weapon. The Draknir hive mind requires order to function. We deny them that order." A different officer spoke up. "Admiral, the swarm is attempting to use the asteroid field in Sector 12 as cover." Hayden didn't hesitate. "Fire mass drivers into the field. Turn those rocks into projectiles." Nilrex felt sick as he watched the human strategy unfold. Kinetic impactors slammed into asteroids, shattering them into millions of fragments. The debris field expanded, moving at ballistic velocities. Draknir bioships trying to hide in the asteroids were shredded by the very cover they sought. "This is brutal," Nilrex said quietly. Hayden turned to face him directly. "This is efficient. The Draknir consumed 17 civilizations. 340 billion sentient beings died screaming as they were dissolved into biomatter. We're responding with appropriate force." The galaxy believed humans were peaceful. Your culture emphasizes cooperation, diplomacy. "We are peaceful," Hayden said. "We prefer diplomacy, but we come from a world that taught us a hard truth. Peace only exists when someone is willing to fight for it. Earth spent millennia at war before we unified. We learned how to end conflicts decisively because we understood the cost of prolonged fighting." An alarm sounded. The officer at communications looked up with concern. "Admiral, the swarm is broadcasting on multiple frequencies. It looks like a distress signal." "To what? There are no other Draknir forces in range." "Unknown, ma'am. The signal is encoded, but it's repeating." Hayden's expression darkened. "They're calling for reinforcement. Weapons officer, prepare antimatter warheads. If there are more swarms out there, we need to end this one before they arrive." Nilrex's 3 hearts hammered in his chest. "Antimatter. Most species consider that too dangerous to weaponize." "Most species never faced extinction," Hayden replied. "We developed stable containment systems 300 years ago. When you're fighting for survival, you use every tool available." The antimatter missiles launched, their magnetic bottles containing enough antihydrogen to annihilate small moons. When they detonated among the Draknir formation, matter and antimatter met in perfect annihilation. The explosions released pure energy, erasing everything within their radius. Nilrex watched bioships vanish, simply ceasing to exist as their atoms were converted to radiation. "You're not just defeating them, you're erasing them from existence." "Yes," Hayden said without emotion. "The Draknir don't surrender, they don't negotiate, they consume until nothing remains. We're ensuring they can't threaten anyone ever again." The battle continued for another hour, though it barely qualified as a battle. It was an execution. The human fleet moved with mechanical precision, eliminating targets with ruthless efficiency. Every time the Draknir tried a new tactic, the humans countered instantly. Finally, the last bioship flickered and died. The Warzone fell silent except for debris tumbling through space. "Status report," Hayden ordered. "All Draknir vessels destroyed. Human casualties, 17 ships damaged, 208 crew members killed in action." Hayden closed her eyes briefly. "Prepare casualty notifications. Their families deserve to know they died protecting others." Nilrex realized something important. These humans weren't monsters who enjoyed killing. They were professionals doing an ugly job because nobody else could. They mourned their dead even as they continued fighting. "Admiral," the communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving multiple signals from deeper in Draknir territory. Energy signatures consistent with swarm clusters." "How many?" Hayden asked. "At least 16, ma'am, possibly more." Hayden straightened. "Transmit message to Earth Command. Request reinforcements and authorization for extended operations. We're not going home until this threat is eliminated completely." Nilrex understood. The humans hadn't come to win a battle, they had come to win a war. 3 weeks after the first engagement, observer Nilrex sat in the mess hall of the destroyer Valiant. The human crew members around him talked quietly, sharing stories about home and family. "Your people seem remarkably calm," Nilrex said to the Marine sitting across from him. The nameplate read Sergeant Williams. "You've been in combat almost continuously for weeks." Williams ate her food steadily. "This is what we train for. Besides, we're winning. The Draknir don't stand a chance against coordinated human tactics." 17 swarm clusters destroyed in 21 days, Nilrex agreed. "It's unprecedented, but at what cost? I've documented 83 human deaths." 87 as of this morning, Williams corrected. "We're preventing future deaths. Every swarm we eliminate is billions of potential victims who get to live." A klaxon sounded, and the mess hall emptied within seconds. Nilrex followed Williams to the combat stations, strapping himself into an observer seat. Through the viewscreen, he saw why the alarm had sounded. The swarm cluster ahead wasn't like the others. It had fortified itself inside the hollowed-out remains of a gas giant, using the planet's mass as a shield. Bioships swarmed around it like antibodies protecting an infection. "Target analysis complete," the weapons officer reported to Captain Rodriguez. "Estimated 40,000 Draknir vessels. They've had time to prepare defenses." Rodriguez studied the tactical display. "They learned from the other clusters. They're using the planet's magnetic field to disrupt our targeting systems." "Recommend we call in siege platforms," the first officer suggested. "Negative. Siege platforms are 3 days out. The swarm is building more ships every hour we wait." Rodriguez activated the fleet-wide channel. "All vessels, execute dispersal pattern Omega. We're going to dig them out." Nilrex watched as the human fleet split into dozens of smaller groups, each approaching from a different vector. The Draknir ships rushed out to meet them, and for the first time since he had joined the humans, Nilrex saw something that looked like an even fight. Bioships collided with human destroyers. Energy weapons scorched hulls. Missiles filled the space between combatants. The Valiant shook as a Draknir beam caught their starboard side, burning through outer armor. "Hull breach on Deck 7, someone shouted. "Emergency bulkheads engaged." "Keep firing," Rodriguez ordered calmly. "Target their command nodes. If we kill the larger vessels, the smaller ones lose coordination." Williams returned from damage control, her uniform scorched. "Deck 7 is sealed. We lost 6 people." Rodriguez nodded grimly. "Their sacrifice matters. Press the attack." The human ships fought with a ferocity that shocked Nilrex. When conventional weapons proved insufficient, they rammed Draknir vessels, using their own hulls as weapons. When ammunition ran low, they used debris fields as improvised projectiles. But something changed in the battle's rhythm. The human ships began working in perfect synchronization, their movements flowing like a choreographed dance. Nilrex realized they were using a tactic the Draknir couldn't predict because it required trust between individual units. "Pattern recognition complete," the tactical officer announced. "The swarm's defensive algorithm has a 6-second processing delay when targets separate by more than 10,000 kilometers." "Exploit it," Rodriguez commanded. "All ships, execute split-merge maneuver." The The human vessels scattered, forcing the Drachnir to divide their attention. Then, precisely 6 seconds later, they converged on single targets, overwhelming them before the swarm could redistribute defensive resources. It was beautiful and terrible, like watching predators hunt in pack formation. Within an hour, the outer defensive shell cracked. Human ships pushed through, firing weapons into the hollowed planet itself. Nilrex expected the swarm to retreat deeper, but instead, something emerged from the planet's core. A bioship larger than anything he had ever seen, easily 3 times the size of the biggest human vessel. Its hull pulsed with organic light, and smaller ships grew from its surface like parasitic offspring. "That's the brood mother," Rodriguez said quietly. "That's what's been producing new swarm ships. Take that down and this cluster dies." Every human ship turned toward the massive target. The brood mother responded with weapons that tore space itself, creating gravitational shears that pulled ships off course. 2 human frigates were crushed like paper, their crews dying instantly. "All remaining ships, focus fire on the same point," Rodriguez ordered. "We need to penetrate that hull." Thousands of weapons fired simultaneously at a single spot on the brood mother's surface. Armor boiled away under the concentrated assault. Energy beams burned through layers of biomatter. Kinetic rounds punched deep into the creature's interior. The brood mother shuddered. Its weapons fell silent. For a moment, Nilrex thought it might survive. Then it began to collapse inward, its structure failing. The smaller ships growing from its surface died instantly, their connection to the mother severed. "Target destroyed," the weapons officer confirmed. The remaining Drachnir ships went berserk, attacking with suicidal aggression. But without the brood mother's coordination, they were just mindless beasts. The human fleet methodically eliminated them one by one. When silence returned, Rodriguez addressed his crew. "Good work. Another cluster eliminated. Begin search and rescue operations for any survivors from the damaged ships." Nilrex approached the captain. "You lost 19 ships in that battle, nearly 300 people." "I know," Rodriguez said softly. "I'll write letters to every family personally. But those 300 saved billions. That brood mother would have produced enough ships to consume 10 more systems within a year. How do you bear it, the weight of those decisions?" Rodriguez looked out at the stars. "Because someone has to make them. The galaxy tried containment, tried negotiation, tried every civilized option. They all failed. Sometimes the only way to protect innocent lives is through violence. We accept that burden so others don't have to." Nilrex finally understood. Humans weren't warriors because they loved war. They were warriors because they loved peace enough to fight for it. The Galactic Council reconvened 6 weeks into what they now called the Human Pacification Campaign. Ambassador Telrin presented Observer Nilrex's latest reports. The holographic displays showed battle after battle, each one ending with complete Drachnir elimination. 23 swarm clusters destroyed, Telrin announced. "The humans have accomplished in 6 weeks what we couldn't achieve in 50 years. High Commander Drax activated a recording. It showed a human siege platform deploying a planet cracker weapon. The massive device burrowed into an asteroid field where a swarm breeding facility had taken root. When it detonated, the entire field shattered, taking thousands of Drachnir ships with it. They're using weapons designed to destroy worlds," Drax said. "Technologies most civilized species banned millennia ago." "Against an enemy that consumes worlds," Ambassador Quinn countered. "Should we criticize their methods when they're saving billions of lives?" The debate raged for hours. Some species called human saviors. Others called them dangerous extremists who would destabilize galactic peace. Telrin listened to both sides, understanding that neither was entirely wrong. Meanwhile, light years away, Admiral Hayden reviewed reconnaissance data in her ready room. Observer Nilrex had been granted permission to attend these briefings, documenting everything for the Council. "We've identified the source," Lieutenant Brooks reported, pulling up a star chart. "Deep in the dead zones, there's a system that shouldn't exist according to our models. The star is older than it should be, and there's a massive energy signature at its center." "The Hive Nexus," Hayden said quietly, "where the Dracnir originated." Nilrex felt his skin prickle. "You've known about this." "We suspected. Earth's deep space probes detected anomalous signals from that region 40 years ago, but we had no idea what they meant. Now we do. That's where the swarm began. That's where it continues to spawn new clusters." "How large is it?" Brooks manipulated the display. What appeared made Nilrex's blood run cold. The structure at the system's heart was larger than any planet he had ever seen. A biological megastructure that had been growing for centuries, maybe millennia. Dracnir ships swarmed around it like cells in a vast organism. "Sensor estimates suggest 6 million bioships defending the Nexus," Brooks continued. "Every cluster we've destroyed was spawned from that central mass." 6 million, Nilrex whispered. "You can't fight that. Even with all your weapons, you'll be overwhelmed." Hayden stood and walked to the viewport. Stars gleamed in the darkness beyond. "Conventional assault would fail. You're right about that. But we didn't come this far to leave the job unfinished." "What are you planning?" "I've requested authorization from Earth Command for terminal protocol. We're waiting for confirmation." "What's terminal protocol?" Hayden turned to face him. "The complete and permanent elimination of a species-level threat. We have weapons that we've never deployed, Observer. Technologies we developed during our worst conflicts on Earth. We kept them in reserve, hoping we'd never need them again. And now we need them." The authorization came through 3 days later. Nilrex watched as massive cargo ships arrived from human space, carrying weapons with designations he couldn't translate. The crews handled them with reverence and fear, like sacred objects that held terrible power. Captain Rodriguez explained it during a quiet moment. "Those are Nova-class devices. They're designed to trigger stellar collapse, weaponized supernovas." "You can't be serious. The energy release would affect dozens of neighboring systems." "The neighboring systems are already dead. The Dracnir consumed them years ago. We checked. The blast radius will remain within the dead zones." "You're going to destroy a star. That's not war, that's cosmic vandalism." Rodriguez looked tired. "It's necessity. The Hive Nexus has been producing swarms for possibly thousands of years. How many species did it destroy before we arrived? How many more will it destroy if we leave it intact? We have the capability to end this threat permanently. We're going to use it." The human fleet gathered at the edge of the target system. 2,000 ships now, reinforcements having arrived steadily from Earth. Nilrex watched from the Perseverance as Admiral Hayden addressed the entire fleet. "What we're about to do will echo through history," she said. "The Dracnir swarm has consumed 17 civilizations. Today, we ensure they consume no more. Our orders are clear. Eliminate the threat. Protect the galaxy. Remember the fallen. Stay focused." The fleet advanced. The Dracnir responded instantly, launching waves of bioships that numbered in the millions. The largest space battle in recorded history began. Human ships fought with desperate efficiency. They knew they couldn't win through conventional means, so they didn't try. Instead, they executed a fighting retreat, drawing the swarm away from the Nexus itself. Nilrex watched in horror as ships were destroyed, crews vaporized, but the humans never stopped moving. They were buying time for the siege platforms to position themselves around the system's star. "All platforms in position," Brooks reported, waiting for final authorization. Hayden took a deep breath. "Do it." The platforms fired simultaneously. 20 devices penetrated the star's corona, burrowing deep into its core. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the star's light changed, shifting from yellow to blue-white. "All ships emergency FTL jump," Hayden ordered. "Execute now." The human fleet vanished into faster-than-light travel. Nilrex felt the strange sensation of reality bending around him. Through the viewscreen, he saw the star beginning to collapse, its fusion reactions cascading out of control. The Dracnir swarm realized the danger too late. Bioships tried to flee, but there wasn't enough time. The star detonated with the force of 1 billion fusion bombs. The shockwave expanded at near-light speed. Everything in the system was incinerated instantly. The Hive Nexus, the millions of Dracnir ships, all traces of the swarm's origin point simply ceased to exist. When the sensors cleared, the system was gone. Where a star had once burned, there was only an expanding cloud of radioactive debris. Admiral Hayden stood silently, watching the destruction. Nilrex saw tears on her face. "It's done," she whispered. "The swarm is extinct." 2 months after the Nova detonation, observer Nilrex returned to the Galactic Council chambers. He looked different now, thinner, his scales dull from stress. "The Dracnir swarm is extinct," he reported. "Sensor sweeps show no bioship signatures, no hive communication. Humanity eliminated a threat that had existed for centuries." The chamber erupted in mixed reactions. Some species celebrated, others looked disturbed. Ambassador Quinn asked the question everyone was thinking: at what cost to the humans themselves? Nilrex pulled up casualty reports. 417 ships destroyed. 6,208 human crew members killed in action. Another 12,000 wounded. For a species with a relatively small population compared to the major galactic powers, these losses are significant. "And psychologically?" Telrin asked quietly. "They mourn their dead. Every ship holds memorial services. Admiral Hayden personally recorded messages for each fallen crew member's family, but they don't regret what they did. They believe it was necessary." High Commander Drax studied the tactical data. Their fleet composition has changed. They're not withdrawing. They're establishing permanent military installations throughout the dead zones. "Defense stations," Nilrex confirmed. "Automated weapons platforms, sensor networks, early warning systems. They're ensuring nothing like the Dracnir can ever emerge from those regions again." "They're occupying territory," Drax said. "Territory that doesn't belong to them." "Territory that nobody wanted," Quinn corrected. "We abandoned those systems. The humans are protecting them." The debate continued, but Nilrex barely listened. His mind kept returning to a conversation he'd had with Admiral Hayden the day before he departed. They had stood in the observation deck of the Perseverance, watching construction crews assemble the first defense station. Hayden looked older than when they first met, the weight of command etched into her features. "Do you think we're monsters?" she had asked. Nilrex had considered the question carefully. "I think you're dangerous, more dangerous than any species the galaxy has encountered. But monsters? No, monsters enjoy the harm they cause. You carry it like a burden." "We killed an entire species," Hayden said quietly. "Genocide, there's no other word for it. The Dracnir killed 17 species before you stopped them. Would it have been better to let them continue?" "No, but that doesn't make what we did right. It just makes it necessary. There's a difference." Nilrex had understood then. Humans weren't proud of their capacity for violence. They were ashamed of needing it, but they accepted the responsibility anyway. Back in the council chambers, the debate reached its conclusion. By narrow vote, humanity was granted control of the dead zones and offered a permanent seat on the Galactic Security Council. It was unprecedented for a species so new to galactic civilization. When Telrin delivered the news to the human delegation, Admiral Hayden accepted with quiet dignity. "We'll honor this responsibility, but understand, we won't hesitate to use force if another existential threat emerges. The galaxy has seen what we're capable of. That knowledge should serve as deterrent to anyone considering aggression. It was a statement of fact, not a threat, but it sent ripples through the council chambers anyway. 3 weeks later, Nilrex attended the dedication ceremony for the first defense station. It hung in space at the edge of former Draknir territory, bristling with weapons and sensors. Human crew members worked alongside volunteers from a dozen species. The Kesslin sector sent engineers. The Avalon Collective provided materials. Even the Velorum Alliance contributed expertise. Captain Rodriguez found Nilrex during the ceremony. Strange, isn't it? 6 months ago, most of these species barely acknowledged us. Now they're working side by side with human crews. Fear breeds respect, Nilrex observed. They saw what you can do when threatened. Is that all it is, fear? No, Nilrex admitted. Gratitude too. You saved billions of lives, that matters. A young Kesslin engineer approached, carrying a data tablet. Observer Nilrex, I wanted to thank you for your reports. My family lives in the Kesslin sector. If the humans hadn't stopped the swarm, we would have been consumed. Your documentation helped the council understand why their methods were necessary. After the engineer left, Rodriguez smiled sadly. See, it's not all fear. Some of them actually appreciate what we did. And some will always hate you for it, Nilrex said. That's the price of being the galaxy's protector. You'll be respected and resented in equal measure. We can live with that, Rodriguez replied, as long as people get to live. The ceremony concluded with a moment of silence for all those lost to the Draknir over the centuries. 17 species, 340 billion souls, now remembered in the station's central database, and 6,208 humans who died ensuring it could never happen again. As ships began departing, Nilrex prepared his final report for the council. His conclusion was simple but profound. Humanity had changed the galaxy forever. They had proven that some threats required absolute responses. That pacifism, while noble, sometimes enabled greater evils. That the capacity for violence, when paired with the wisdom to use it sparingly, could be a force for good. But he also included a warning. Humans were powerful, but they were still learning their place in galactic civilization. They needed guidance, needed integration, needed to be welcomed rather than feared. Because a species capable of triggering stellar collapse could be the galaxy's greatest defender or its worst nightmare. The choice belonged to everyone. Admiral Hayden transmitted her final status report to Earth Command. Mission accomplished. Threat eliminated. Defense perimeter established. Requesting permission to rotate crews home. As the Perseverance set course for Earth, Hayden allowed herself a moment of relief. The war was over. The galaxy was safer. And perhaps, just perhaps, humanity had proven they belonged among the stars not as conquerors but as guardians. The bridge crew began the long journey home, carrying with them the knowledge that when civilization needed defenders, humans had answered the call. And they always would. 6 months after the war ended, a Kesslin merchant vessel detected an anomaly in deep space. The energy signature didn't match any known technology. The call went out to the Human Defense Network. 3 human patrol ships arrived within hours. What they found was a derelict structure floating between stars. Ancient beyond measure, its hull composed of materials predating any known civilization. Commander Patricia Hayes studied the readings with concern. This isn't Draknir, something older. Her science officer worked at his console. Commander, the power signature is building. It's waking up. The structure unfurled like a mechanical flower. Weapons ports opened. Energy readings spiked. Then it spoke in an unknown language. Translation algorithms worked desperately. Finally, words formed. Combat detected. Pacification protocols engaged. Surrender or be eliminated. Hayes realized what they had found. Not a derelict, a guardian. Some ancient civilization had left automated defenders across the galaxy. The Draknir War had awakened one. Transmit all friendly identification codes, Hayes ordered. The structure fired without acknowledgement. The beam weapon tore through space. Hayes's ship dodged, but one escort wasn't fast enough. The patrol ship disintegrated instantly. All ships' evasive action, return fire. Human weapons proved useless against shields that shrugged off everything. Hayes ordered retreat. The emergency transmission reached Admiral Hayden as she prepared to retire. Looking at the sensor data, she knew retirement would wait. Recall all defense forces, she ordered. Observer Nilrex appeared in her office. The Council is panicking. They call it the Sentinel, ancient defense technology from a precursor civilization. There might be hundreds scattered across the galaxy. All dormant until our war woke it up, Hayden said. Our weapons activated its threat protocols. For 3 weeks, an uneasy standoff continued. Human ships maintained a perimeter, studying the Sentinel. Then it moved toward the Kesslin sector, 40 billion souls in its path. Hayes, commanding the defensive fleet, faced an impossible choice. Let the Sentinel reach civilians, or engage and risk everything. She chose to fight. The human fleet attacked with everything learned from the Draknir War. Coordinated strikes, overwhelming firepower, tactical precision. The Sentinel's shields held against fusion warheads, its weapons carved through human ships. But humans adapted. When conventional weapons failed, they tried different approaches. Target the energy conduits, Hayes ordered. Don't penetrate the shields, overload them. Human ships channeled power into sustained beam attacks on single points, not breaking through, but forcing the shields to draw more power. The Sentinel's defensive system strained under the constant energy demand. Meanwhile, engineering teams developed a desperate plan. If they couldn't destroy the Sentinel, maybe they could reprogram it. A volunteer crew in a stealth ship approached during the battle. While the Sentinel focused on the fleet, they attached to its hull. Engineers worked on access panels, searching for a way into its systems. Lieutenant Sarah Chen led the boarding team. Her hands shook as she cut through alien metal. I've got access to something. Looks like a data port. Human AI specialists prepared intrusion software. Upload the package. Let's try to communicate with this thing. The software infiltrated the Sentinel's ancient systems. Not attacking, just communicating. Sending mathematical proofs, universal constants, anything to establish that humans were intelligent, not threats to be eliminated. For agonizing seconds, nothing happened. The Sentinel continued its systematic destruction of human ships. Then it stopped firing. Its weapons powered down, shields dropped. The structure hung silent in space. Chen's voice crackled over the radio. Commander, it worked. It's accepting our input. There's a standby protocol. Hayes hardly dared to breathe. Can you shut it down? I can put it to sleep. It'll stay dormant unless specific threats appear. Do it carefully. The Sentinel's lights dimmed. Its power faded to minimal levels. The ancient guardian returned to dormancy. Hayes addressed her fleet. Stand down from combat alert. Maintain observation distance. Science teams, continuous monitoring. We need to find the rest of these before something else wakes them. 23 ships destroyed. 417 dead, all to put an ancient machine to sleep. Admiral Hayden reviewed the reports from Earth. Humanity had survived through ingenuity and desperate risks. The galaxy held ancient dangers everywhere. The Draknir were one threat among many. The Galactic Council convened emergency sessions. The Sentinel incident proved the galaxy needed permanent defenders. Humanity had proven themselves twice. Ambassador Telrin proposed a unified defense force using human military doctrine. The proposal passed with overwhelming support. Observer Nilrex compiled his final report on human capabilities. His conclusion acknowledged what everyone understood. Humanity combined advanced technology, tactical brilliance, and moral courage to use force when necessary while showing restraint when possible. They were dangerous but reliable. When the galaxy faced extinction, humans fought. That reliability mattered more than fear. Hayes watched the dormant Sentinel drift in space. Lieutenant Chen joined her. "Think there are more out there?" Chen asked. "Probably. The galaxy is old. Civilizations left behind weapons we barely understand. And we deal with it. Somebody has to. We didn't ask for this, but we can handle it." Hayes turned from the viewport. "That's what it means to be human here. We do what's necessary when others can't." Chen nodded. "The Guardians." "The Guardians," Hayes agreed. Across human space, defense installations expanded. Sensor networks spread through the dead zones. Human ships patrolled borders no one else would defend. Veterans trained new crews, passing on hard-won knowledge. The galaxy slept safer knowing humanity stood watch. And humanity accepted the burden because someone had to care enough to fight for those who couldn't. The stars turned in their eternal dance. Among them, humans maintained their vigil, ready, capable, willing. When the next threat emerged, humanity would answer again.